Good afternoon. My name is Chris Postell, and I am joined by two amazing individuals, Carolayne Henry at the Mountain West Conference and Victor Castro at Army West Point.
Hey, how you doing?
Please, tell us a little bit about yourselves.
You want to go first, Carolayne?
Sure. My name is Carolayne Henry. I'm a Senior Associate Commissioner at the Mountain West Conference. One of the things I do among many is I'm our eSport administrator. We started esports in the Mountain West about 5 years ago, and you fast forward to now, and it's certainly thriving. And we're hopeful for the future, and I'm very, very excited about being on the panel with both Chris and Victor, and hopefully we can be informational today.
Yeah, and I'm Victor Castro. I'm the Director of Army West Point Esports. New program for our area in the Northeast. One of the service academies, as we all know, the Naval Academy as well as the Air Force Academy. So we're diving into it as we look at collegiate esports as a way to enhance the education for the cadets, enhance experience for them as much as possible. So we're really here getting ourselves embedded into everything they see here at CECC for this first annual. I mean, this amazing event.
Yeah. And to comment on that before we get started, we're at the CECC finals here in Atlanta. There are over 1,000 people here today. This is the largest live collegiate esports event in history. How does it feel to be present?
I mean, it feels amazing. I mean, watching our student athletes work over the years, for them to be able to come to an event like this, I mean, I can't say enough about how it's really impacted them positively, and so grateful for the opportunity to participate.
Yeah, I agree. Like, as soon as you came in, you had that immediate impact. And that's what's great about working with students, anybody, even families, everybody that's here, is that, that hit in the face, like, wow, this is fantastic. And as well as we walk around, we see the response of the students as well. A lot of smiles, a lot of celebrations internal to the teams, a lot of things that we're really getting after for collegiate esports.
Absolutely. So today we're talking about pulling back the curtain within collegiate esports programs. And we have two flagship programs and conferences here with a lot of knowledge and a lot of leadership within this space. So the first question that I want to ask about, I want to keep this a little deeper than 101.
Okay.
The $1 million question that so many people ask these days is, does a program have to be university-led and sanctioned, or are we still in the days where student-run can still move the needle? Where do you feel collegiate esports currently lands?
So for the Mountain West Conference, we really like the administrator involvement of it for a number of different reasons. And that doesn't mean that you don't still have your student-run clubs, but with the administrators involved, there's an opportunity to get a diverse group of student athletes participating. There's an opportunity really to be put on the map of the institution as a whole, sort of like college athletics is the front porch. Esports is not far behind, and so you represent your institution and you really have an opportunity to make an impact for your institution when you have more administrator involvement.
And whether it's like a director sanctioned large university, community college, the problems for every one of those leaders are still existing. It doesn't really differentiate between. So imagine a student-led director, and she's dealing with the problems that no matter what, organization, administratively, all that stuff. So it's still kind of the same, but what the resources that somebody can put against it is going to be that different aspect.
Yeah.
So here at the Academy, I'm a DoD civilian. I have the longevity. I have the ability to look at step by step, do this 3-year, 5-year plan.
Right.
Imagine a young student that's taking over the program, and she has the same type of effort she's trying to do, and then also has that cognitive weight that she's dealing with. So I would just say that that's what we're kind of here. We want to pull back the curtain and say, what did we learn? What could they take from this? And what could work for them? And I say it's agnostic. It's almost the same problems that they're dealing with.
And I to piggyback on what Victor was saying, just from a continuity perspective, if you want this to continue, having an administrator in that role, while you could also have a student who maybe shadows you so that she can learn or he can learn the administrative side of it, it really helps for the next student athletes to, that come along.
Absolutely. We do the same thing. We have a cadet in charge, what we call the CIC. This person is really that go-between between me being this administrator and then having the culture of the student see another student. You also have that connection between the student-led versus the talent that's within the organization. So I actually push back a lot. I'm like, hey, is everything good? And the CIC is like, yes, sir, we're good. Okay, and it's a really hands-off approach.
One reason I'm really excited to have you here, Carolayne, is because not a lot of people have a chance to hear from a conference what a conference does. There's still a little bit of an ephemeral mystique and mystery behind conferences. As you know, collegiate esports is still, we have to think about it, remind from a programmatic standpoint, less than 7 years old. We're not that old right now. So in your own words, can you tell the viewers what is the mission of the Mountain West Conference, and what do you view as your biggest priority that you meet? How do you serve your schools?
I think one of the first things that we did is our board of directors, which is a college president at each one of our institutions, asked us to explore esports, and the reason they did that is because of the type of talent they attract from a student perspective, and then it also provides another participation opportunity for a group of students on campus. And what our presidents were noticing was that there was a community of students who were playing games, and they wanted to make that more official, and at the same time, again, provide opportunity for student athletes. It's great academically, and it's a really, really good, view from the front porch, I say, of our institution's campus. But I just was really impressed with how interested our board of directors were in esports, and how interested they were in continuing esports.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. And Victor,
Yeah.
as what I would consider a flagship program, tell me about the mission of Army West Point Esports.
Well, it's
what are you
exactly-
serving?
We're serving the student.
Right.
No matter what, we really truly hope is that every organization looks at their student body as the talent, the people they have to care about most. So the first thing I had to do as a director is look at the mission of the academy, which we all know, it's create leaders of character and commission the United States Army. With doing that, we also broke it down to the pillars within that. We're looking at character, we're looking at physical, we're looking at military, we're looking at academic. What could esports do? And this is what's the great about collegiate esports, is its fluidity into getting into one of these different pillars. So from a conference standpoint, every one of these programs are feeding into everybody's mission. And then when it gets into the conference, the mission of the conference, all that's very, very transparent. So what I did was do that, make sure that the student sees working examples of what they need to do for their, for them to build character. And then we have this deliberate practice for each one of those. So no matter what, whenever we have these fluctuations between what happens in esports and competition, I keep the mission the same. The core is the student, the core is the pillars of the academy, and what the superintendent wants from us from those actual experiences. So now we're just like going along with the game. Like this kind of thing like now changes the game. So now as long as I stay with the core mission and then what we would say the policy, I'm fine. I can just fluid and I can move in any direction.
I really appreciate that. Esports moves at the speed of light. We're on the forefront of digital innovation and all that comes with it and all that is touched by it. So I want to ask you, what is the problem or the challenge that you are currently surmounting or addressing right now within your program? Where is the pain point that you are currently trying to overcome or foresee coming in the short term?
Well, we've heard the term across esports. It's really the wild, wild west right now. I mean, conferences do a great job of handling their own championships. They do a great job of doing it internally to them. What's the footprint right now across collegiate esports? Where's our role as Army West Point Esports? Conferences in the East. Where can I help? Where can I make an impact? Well, obviously sharing information across all the different schools, even down to high school, the BOCES programs, everything. But that's the problem. Where's the guidance? Is it coming from a conference leader? Is it coming from, where's it coming from?
Right.
There's a good chance it doesn't even exist. So there's that. Then you also have the issues that I think we're going to talk about later tonight is diversity, equity, inclusion, all the different things as program directors we have to address. We have to make sure are important to so all that's really on my table right now for that. Everything else that goes with it, it just comes with esports. The competition, I don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Because it's very natural, it's very intrinsic to collegiate esports.
Yeah, and Carolayne, I'd like to talk, since you mentioned diversity, equity, inclusion, I just want to briefly touch on this. As a commissioner, as a conference, how do you address and assess diversity either within your conference or within the participating programs? Do you have any forward statements or core values that you emphasize for inclusion of women, or for Title IX? Do those conversations come up? And if so, what are you currently doing to either promote or address them?
So we do have conversations, and actually one of the goals of our group, and I convene our eSport administrators on a quarterly basis, and one of the main things we've been talking about is sharing best practices on how to diversify your teams. Whether it's an open call, just a gaming night to see if there are any women and or ethnic minorities who are interested, and then try to get their interest in our teams. But it's been an ongoing effort from the Mountain West perspective to make sure that our teams have as much information as they can so that they can have a more diverse team or more diverse teams on their campuses. But it's an ongoing issue that we're continuing to address, and we talk about it on every conference call on how we can, better diversify our teams. If you look at our teams that are here today, the more organized they are, I find, the more likely it is that they're going to look a little bit different than what a traditional eSport team looks like, because you'll have women on that team, you'll have females on that team. The other thing that we've done as a conference is make sure that not just the teams are diversified, but who do we have in front of the camera? We have female casters, we have ethnic minority casters that have participated in our event, so that if there is a female gamer and maybe she doesn't want to play the game, but she wants to be involved in the administration of an event, then she sees someone who looks like her, whether it's casting or event management. So we try to make it as whole as possible when we're looking at DE&I.
Wonderful. And one thing that follows from that, we can talk all day about competition, because that's where we are right now, at a competition. But the other element of esports that separates it from traditional sports, our competitive advantage, if you will, is education. Esports can live in the classroom too. And so I would love your perspective on how the Mountain West contributes to that mission of education within esports.
So obviously, not just with esports, but with our conventional sports as well, the educational aspect is the most important. And in fact, for esports, that's one of the reasons the Mountain West Board of Directors wanted to start an esport program, because it attracts academic students, whether they are participating in esports or they can see that you have an esport program, they might be interested in attending your institution. I don't have any data on enrollment numbers, but I'd venture to say that when an institution sponsors esports, you can increase your enrollment from various different parts of the world, let alone the country, but the world, and that helps an institution collectively. And if an institution wants to reach a certain academic status, whether it's Research One, AAU, or whatever, this I think could contribute to that.
I agree. Yeah. And Victor, on your end, as a program, competitively, you're already at the top of your class. You're here. Congratulations. How do you filter through and emphasize academics and education?
Well, think about every young man and woman in this room is a learner at some capacity. So what we're learning about educational psychology is that we've already got them because their interest. They find value, they find interest. They also find something called attainment. And attainment is a very strong element into learning. So they already have an instinctive motivation to be here. What we got to do as educators is make sure that we can rope in learning into what they're already interested in. So the computer interest, computer sciences, electrical engineering, all the different things that we do at the Academy is already embedded in what I can deliver. So it's a great platform. So now I can also do things like communication. What have I done practice-wise for people to see what happens after an argument? It happens in esports all the time. How do you develop these strategies to be able to get out of the argument and progress then with your own team? Do you blow up like an old school band, or do you actually come back together and congeal? We don't have that much practice at the Academy with this small unit team. Strategy, how do you develop strategy? This gives us a platform to focus on, well, if something goes wrong in your strategy, how do you recover from that, and what was plan B? So it's all a delivery method for that education as much as possible.
I love it. And you used a word there, strategy, which I think is perfectly representative of where we are in scholastic esports right now. Because we're all building something new and we're picking our own path. And so I'd like to ask you, what is your strategy for the short term or the next academic year as you've rounded out the spring and the 21 to 22 academic year coming out of a pandemic? What have you learned and what are you hoping to achieve in the next upcoming season?
So one of the things we like to do is get back to our pre-pandemic momentum. We had a great event in 2020 a couple weeks before the pandemic hit, so how can we get that momentum back? We had a lot of interest in that. And then one of the things that we learned, and it was easier to do with esports, is how to keep our community, our student esport community together. We hosted esport events during the pandemic that we could do electronically, at home, and it gave our students a sense of, I belong at this institution, so how do we carry that over now that we're back in person, just to make sure that we maintain that sense of community that we sort of gave our student athletes during the pandemic, when they didn't really have connection to their classmates. They had connection through, we called it it was our social series during the pandemic. We did, I think it was a Rocket League for 6 weeks, just to bring our kids together. And so how do we continue that in person? We took it for granted when we were in person before, but it really was amplified, when we were able to do it during the pandemic. The other thing we'd like to do is get back in person.
Yes.
We had a really good in-person event. As I mentioned, I'd like to see us do a fall in-person event as well as a spring in-person event, and maybe collaborate with people like Victor, in a different part of the country, so that we can really bring more, eyeballs and, interest in esports in general.
I love it. Victor, for you, same question.
Yep.
Looking forward to the next academic year,
Absolutely.
where are your eyes? What's the prize? What are you trying to improve?
Really the same thing. Transparency is huge here. What lessons learned. Everything we're doing as far as that. We continue to push forward, even if there's small steps, make steps forward. And try to share. And even if there's other programs out there, contact us. Get in touch. There's a wealth of knowledge available. It's like you don't have to take these blind planning decisions. Social media is a step away. So don't be shy. I think we owe them. You do a great job of putting data together and sharing all that stuff. Just give us a call. It's really not that bad. For me, we're going to continue to watch. We take direction from higher. Hey, we want to move there, but being new to this larger scope, I'm going to continue to watch. People that are in the game before us. We are going to collaborate soon, getting the Northeast more into this. But the LANs are where it's going to be at. Just in person, it's going to be the thing.
That's awesome.
So just stay safe and stay healthy. Be smart about it, and then we'll go from there.
All right, well, I have one more question for both of you today. And as we're pulling back the curtain here, part of pulling back the curtain is extending the conversation. And so I'd like to ask you, what is one question that you believe is not being discussed enough in the current ecosystem in the development of scholastic esports? What can we do better as a community at talking about?
I think, and Victor, you hit on it a little bit when we were talking about some challenges that we have. There's no real universal governance structure. And obviously you're dealing with intellectual property, so you can't just pick up and play a game without asking permission. Unlike you can go play basketball, you can film 3-on-3, whatever you want to do. I'd like to see in certain areas, I'd like discussion on how about let's have recruiting, eligibility, probably playing season, student athlete well-being, maybe 4 topics that we're all consistently doing the same thing, so that you know that you're not recruiting somebody that you're not supposed to, that everyone's meeting the same academic standards. We mentioned that our esports students are academic, but just like traditional or conventional athletes, when they're playing the games as much as they potentially could, would their academics suffer? That's where the playing and practice seasons comes in. Do you limit the amount of time per week that they spend practicing so that they can focus on their athletics? And then do you have a student athlete mental health well-being prong where you have to pay closer attention to the mental health of our participants? That's not talked about, but we're seeing in conventional athletics it needs to be talked about. Let's talk about it here first before it becomes an issue, and maybe it is, but I don't want it to be. But talk about it up front so that our students know where they can go if they're feeling some pressures.
That's wonderful.
Same question. I want to see the path to pro. I want to see that developed a little bit more. I think there's some responsibility for some of the professional organizations to take a look downwards. I think syllabus creation is important. Showing a young woman or a young man what it takes, either an entertainment value, casting, whatever it may be, show them the path to the pros. It's starting to happen a little bit, but I actually think there should be some decisive decision-making efforts from maybe large investors and then some of the pro organizations to actually look back downwards. Large cities, some of the rural areas that can use some of this background support. We do it with some of our partners for how to do a coaching, what it's like, so your time is effective, sharing from all. So we then eventually draw this perfect line. Well, I wouldn't say perfect, but close enough to perfect where somebody knows if I put this much effort in from even high school into college, I know where my next steps are.
Well, and to piggyback on what you were saying, as you look at the path to being pro, what are some of the things that you need to know? Do you need to have an agent, and what does that entail? Right. How do I brand myself? How do I create my brand so that I can take advantage of that if I'm a professional? All of those things kind of wrap right into what Victor was saying.
Yeah.
Your name, image, and likeness. How can you do that right now?
And we have a couple pro people here today, and they're walking, and we haven't spoken with them. They're like, "This is great. I wish I had it when I was playing."
Right.
So we owe it to our students today, and they're doing it. Here we are. We have it for them.
Bonus question.
Okay.
For the two of you.
Okay.
In the conversation of name, image, and likeness, it's a difficult conversation. It's a quagmire right now, but we can have the conversation at scale. MRAs, media rights agreements.
Yeah.
Thoughts right now in collegiate esports?
I think the best thing that we can do right now, whether it's your NILs or MRAs, education, education, education. Because what we're finding in conventional athletics is that student athletes are entering into agreements, but they don't know what they're entering into.
Yeah.
And whether it's in esports or conventional sports, the best thing that you can do right now around that conversation is to educate the individuals who might be impacted by that.
Agree. Education, creating portals. Like, one of the best things we want to teach a young woman or a man is, what do I do? What is my strategy for making good decisions? So am I doing my appropriate research? Am I talking to somebody that already has that experience? If it's not readily available, then it's a really, not a tough step, but it's like, hey, I went into whatever portal and I didn't get anything out of it. We were most likely from higher up, we're failing at that point in particular.
And I would say the motto that we use is ask before you act. Before you sign something, ask. Whether it's, your parent or guardian or someone at your institution, because you don't want 4 or 5 years from now to still be bound by an agreement that you signed, in 2022 and you've moved beyond that.
Yeah, and I think, just to briefly comment on that, the other aspect that we haven't even had a chance to talk about in the context of pulling back the curtain within this subject is that only 33% of esports programs live under athletics. Only less than half live under student life.
Yeah.
There's another chunk altogether that live in an arbitrary hodgepodge of different programs, whether it's IT or academics or their own department or offices of innovation, etc. Many of these programs may not even be applicable or able to sign or underwrite such agreements. So I agree with you that education is paramount, because we can all get caught up in the lights and the glitz and the glamour of events like this and of the narratives and the storylines that get us to this, that we may make decisions that we believe are in good faith and of the best interest of our players, but we may be violating the structure that our institutions have built to protect us.
Absolutely.
And those violations, they may be in good faith or not, may be intentional by the arbitrators. And so that goes back to your comment on education, education, and education. There is so much more work to be done. But in the meantime, I'm so grateful to have had your time to peel back the curtain a little bit more. We could have easily chatted for hours and hours, but I do hope that you have a chance to continue watching these amazing schools. Victor, I hope your schools win. Carolayne, I hope your schools win. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time.
It's Victor.